My name is Jeremy Rubin. I am a Bitcoin Core contributor. I do a lot of work on Bitcoin in terms of security, smart contracts, scalability, lots of different stuff. But today, I'm here to talk to you about Sapio and designing Bitcoin smart contracts. So, you've probably heard the aphorism that you don't got to be faster than the bear, you just have to be faster than the next guy. Well, bad news. Bitcoin might be the next guy. There are a lot of things that I care about for Bitcoin. Decentralization, privacy, scalability, self-custody. And there's a question for Bitcoin of how ossified are we? What does ossified mean? It means like turned to bone. How hard is it to change Bitcoin? Now, if we're too ossified, we're going to be stagnant. But if we're not ossified at all, we're going to be unreliable. Everything's changing all the time, and you can't expect Bitcoin to work the same way day to day. That sounds no bueno. But when we're too stagnant, we're not getting things done. So it's sort of an open question for everybody to think about, which is, well, where are we on decentralization? Where are we on privacy? Where are we on scalability and self-custody? In the last presentation, they asked how many of you have coins on an exchange, and a lot of people do. That's a systematic threat to Bitcoin, and it's something that I think we need to track and actively work on improving every single day, and that's what I'm trying to do. So to get there, we got to start thinking about, well, what does Bitcoin have, what doesn't it have? And a lot of people are going to say to you, Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts. And that's wrong. Bitcoin does have smart contracts. There are a lot of things that you can do. Like you've got multi-sig, that's a smart contract. Hey, we got it in Bitcoin, it doesn't have a bug, had a bug in Ethereum, suck it, right? We've got Lightning, we've got zero-knowledge contingent payments, we have discrete log contracts. You can hear about all these things during this conference, and you're going to learn a ton about them. We've got smart contracts, baby, we can do it. Well, not really. When somebody from the Ethereum community says Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts, they're not talking about the idea that there are applications that can be built inside of the Bitcoin system. They're talking about what it means to be an Ethereum contract developer and what your experience is going to be. As an Ethereum developer, even as a junior dev, you have this magical experience of everything kind of just works. You can ship something. You have solidity. You get rich statefulness inside of your applications that doesn't require running tons of servers. You have automatic interactivity by contract APIs, composability, developer tools, MetaMask. When you build it, you've got all these users who come because they have the tools to be able to use your stuff, and it just works. It's magical. And we don't really have that for Bitcoin in the same way. These more powerful development tools, they fight ossification every single day, because when you can go and you can say, hey, I don't have to interact with the base layer, I can build my application easily on top of the system, then you are able to push the innovation forward. You're able to experiment with better wallets, with new decentralization protocols, with new privacy protocols. I think a big wake-up call for a lot of Bitcoin developers was when they saw the application Tornado Cash on Ethereum, which was a new privacy contract. And hey, they issued a token, I think, to fund themselves. Let's ignore that for now. But it was cool. They got something out. They got something shipped and built. And for Bitcoin, it's a lot harder and slower to do that. More powerful developer tools, less ossification. So what am I trying to do, and what's Sapio? I'm trying to nail the Ethereum contract developer experience, but for Bitcoin. Now, that doesn't mean we're trying to get the EVM, but it means we're trying to get it so that people feel like they can build again inside of Bitcoin. And I think that that is really what's going to help Bitcoin have more capitalistic pressure to innovate. More startups, more activity, improving those 4 key metrics: privacy, scalability, decentralization, and self-custody. So what are we getting with Sapio? Well, it just works, right? It's an ecosystem. You can write your thing in Sapio. You don't have to worry that much about what's going on at the base layer of Bitcoin. You have poor statefulness. It's not as much as you're getting in Ethereum, but hey, it's a little bit of statefulness where you didn't have it before, so no one's complaining. It's based inside of Rust, which means you get to take advantage of the entire Rust ecosystem, which is very popular right now. It's interoperable with other tools in the ecosystem like Miniscript, and you get this sort of automatic interactivity and composability and user interface automatically generated that you're expecting to see in an Ethereum ecosystem, but for Bitcoin things. So kind of the thesis is that, like, hey, the revolution is here. You can use Sapio today. It works on Bitcoin. There are technologies that are in the pipe that are going to make Sapio even better. So from here out, it only gets better. But we do need a few things. We need more contributors to start getting involved in Sapio and using the tooling so that we can mature it and improve it day by day. And that's going to require all of you getting convinced to start building applications with Sapio. Now, what can Sapio do for you? I've been hyping it. I've been like, you're going to build stuff, you're going to build stuff. So let's actually get into what you can concretely do. So now we've got some code to look at, and we're going to go deep in the weeds. Everybody ready? You can read this okay? Just kidding. It's too hard to read in this venue. There is code. This is a real thing that you can do and get involved in. But it's a little bit difficult in this sort of environment to get deep into code. So we're going to go high level. But if you're interested, you can go to learn.sapiolang.org, and you can read all the documentation and figure out how to build these actual applications. And there are code samples for most of the things that are mentioned here today. So we're going to go rapid fire through a couple different applications that I think are particularly exciting. And there's a lot more, but these are just going to give you a sense of the breadth that you can accomplish with Sapio. The first one that I'm excited about is radical self-custody. So I want everybody here to get your coins off an exchange. Like, you should hold them yourself. Now, I'm not going to be a charlatan and tell you I don't have anything on exchanges. I do. It's convenient, it's easy, and the user experience beats what's available. I feel more secure with a lot of exchanges than I do with my own setup, and I'm a Bitcoin Core developer. If it's hard for me, it's probably hard for you guys too. So I have a lot of empathy for that. What I would like to see is a model where you can separate out the different types of roles that you have for your custody and backup solution. The API that I want to see is I want to have an emergency recovery that I set up one time. And look, emergencies don't happen every day, so you don't want to have your emergency setup being something that you have to do every day. If you're trying to put your coins in cold storage and it's something that's going to take you 3 weeks to get your coins out, the reality is you're just not going to put your coins there. So the system that I designed, how it works is you deposit your coins into a middle layer. So you have hot storage where it's on your mobile phone, let's say, and you have cold storage where it's in a vault. Well, now we've got a middle layer. In the middle layer, what you do is you deposit your coins there, and on a regular basis, funds flow into your hot wallet. And if your phone ever gets hacked or you lose it or something, well, you might lose what's on the phone, but what you can do is you can hit a stop button, and it's going to send all those funds back into deep cold storage. And from that deep cold storage setup, well, it might take you a week or two to access all those keys and get them lined up, because that's your emergency situation. It doesn't happen every day, but you can get them back. And so on the right side of the slide, it's maybe a little bit hard to read, but it's just an example of the automatically generated user interface that allows you to examine one of your wallet vaults and see how the funds can flow. Now, this is rudimentary. It's something that's still in progress, but it shows you that there's automated tooling that if you build an application, you'll have a procedurally generated interface that will allow you to at least start interacting with it. So it's going to give developers a lot more power to play around with protocols that they're trying to engineer. So another use case that I'm really excited about is batching. So how many people like paying transaction fees? Anyone? No one. Yeah, transaction fees suck. They're expensive and kind of like a bane of the system that you have to pay them. We need transaction fees to make Bitcoin healthy and pay for the network, but it's better if you can minimize those fees, and also if you can decongest the network by putting off transactions that don't need to happen right now. So what I've kind of made with Sapio is a protocol where what you're able to do is, I've got a diagram. So a normal transaction is on the, I'm not sure, the right side of this diagram here. That's kind of what you're used to thinking about. Okay, you have some Bitcoin input, you spend it, you create some outputs, some change addresses. Exchanges do something called batching. Batching is where you take all of those inputs and all of those outputs and you combine them into a single transaction, and that saves you a little bit of money. It saves the exchange some fees. However, the spot demand for block space still depends on how many users they're trying to pay at any given time, and that can be really, really expensive. So one thing you can do, and this is using one of the technologies I've been working on called BIP119 Check Template Verify. And Sapio is essentially a tool for being able to use it in an easy way. that's an underlying technology. That's the thing that's in the pipeline that makes this work better. But what you can do is you can separate out the sending and the redemption phase, kind of like a cashier's check, where what you say is, okay, look, I create this output, and anybody can come later and claim their money. This exerts a back pressure on the network, so it decongests the transaction load. It gives people full confirmation of their funds, and Sapio is there to make it easy for exchanges and businesses to deploy it in an API and ABI that's compatible with everything else in the Sapio ecosystem, so that a Sapio-compatible wallet will be able to handle these very cleanly. This is another one that I'm really excited about, mining pool decentralization. Mining is a major problem for Bitcoin. I think half of the talks here have something to do with mining, so it's pretty relevant. Decentralization is what makes Bitcoin special. If you look at any other ecosystem, people will tell you about ETH, they'll tell you about Solana, they'll tell you about any myriad of tokens, and then when you say, well, look at the decentralization, Bitcoin is the king, right? Bitcoin is the best with that, but how good is it? Like I said, we can be doing better. And when people say, well, decentralization is improving, because look, they just shut down all the miners in China, right? Those are going to come to America. Wait a minute, an authoritarian regime told people they can't do their private business and then sent their business elsewhere. That's not good. Mining should be much more decentralized. There should be much more dispersed. And so what's difficult is when you're a small miner, it's hard to be profitable. And you have to rely on these central pools in order to aggregate the hash rate and provide a more stable experience. So can we get rid of these central operators, and can we make it so that they are not subject to the whims of whichever country they're in? It turns out that using Sapio, you are able to make a protocol for a decentralized mining pool. These have been proposed before. There's one called P2 Pool that people did before. Please do not pee in the pool, but it is P2 Pool. And that protocol had an issue. In fact, it was the same issue that we talked about before. How do you scale payouts to a large number of users? It's difficult. And if you have lots of little tiny miners and they're getting paid out in every single block they mine, the protocol collapses within its own weight. Now, if we do the decongestion trick that I showed you on the previous slide, in every block that you're mining, you've actually deferred that transaction load. And this is where, this is kind of like a mind-blowing galaxy brain kind of thing. Using Sapio, you can actually open Lightning channels for people in a non-interactive way. And so every miner can look back and find participating blocks and create a tree of channels that aren't actually created on-chain for everyone. This opens the door for this sort of protocol, which is a little bit to watch, but you can see at the top, you have these windows of miners who look back at the previous blocks and reward everybody who participated legitimately in the pool. And then they pay out to a tree paying all the miners who are participating. And then after you have enough miners who are online in these trees with pending payouts inside of channels, they can cut through. They can say, well, hey, look, I have one channel on this tree, and you have a channel on this tree. What if we just swapped coins across those? And I would get some of these coins, you would get some of those. So if you look at this diagram as you go down through time, people are switching which coins they have and where they have representation. And then after a long time of running this protocol, again, asynchronously, it doesn't have to happen all at once during block creation, which is sort of the core innovation here. Then what you can get is people only get a single payout every time they hit some saturation point or need a withdrawal. So it's much more scalable. It allows a much, much larger number of miners to participate in the base layer consensus of Bitcoin. That, to me, is a very big idea and something that there's a prototype for. It took me an afternoon to implement in Sapio. All right, DeFi. Now, this wasn't in one of the 4 things that I said were key metrics for Bitcoin, but I think that it's something that everybody's kind of interested in and looks a little bit jealously over at the Ethereum camp of like, I want these things. Now, we have things like discrete log contracts that do some things for us, and I think discrete log contracts are really awesome, but we want more. We want that sort of composability where somebody works on a protocol, somebody works on another protocol, and you can slam them together and get something new and innovative. That's what Sapio helps you do. So again, I can't really do the code, but the example that I have shown here is you can make a dollar risk reversal contract in Bitcoin. So you could say, hey, look, I want to have Bitcoin at the end of the day, but plus or minus 10%, I want to have stable purchasing power in dollars. And so somebody could do that. They could get it for a premium. But let's say you wanted to say, well, I want to do this contract, but I want it as an option contract instead. I don't just want the derivative. Give it to me as something that I could decide to pay a premium for. Make me an on-chain DEX. So somebody else can write an on-chain DEX contract that can open up a dollar risk reversal. And Sapio lets you very seamlessly plug in these two protocols together, sort of that same ecosystem benefit and aggregate development effort that you see in the Ethereum community, where somebody defines ERC20, and now all of a sudden everybody can take their ERC20 token and plug it into Uniswap. Somebody could make a DEX contract for Bitcoin. It would be peer-to-peer, not centralized in the same way that Ethereum has a single contract. And then somebody else could say, well, I made a new financial instrument, and they can seamlessly plug that in together. These are L2 embeddable in the same sense. So as the technology matures, we can have compatibility with Lightning as well. So you could say, hey, look, we've got a Sapio contract that's a plug-in module for a Lightning network, and now we can get cooperation for parties to do these on a settlement basis. And there are also things that Sapio can do to help with the Oracle protocols. Oracles are controversial. People don't necessarily love them. Discrete log contracts relies on a trusted information broker. You can minimize that trust by making it punishable. Sapio helps you make that trust even less by binding people inside of protocols that lock them up more dynamically, so you can tell when somebody's about to cheat, and you don't have a metastability issue where they can cheat if they're fast enough. It reduces some of those risks. So it makes oracles easier to use. So that is also like a very big thing I'm excited about. And I think we'll have a lot more DeFi stuff coming to Bitcoin. And it's different. It's not about the tokenization. It's about being able to manage your treasury assets however you see fit. Sidechains. Some people love them. Some people hate them. We've got a lot of different types of protocols. There's Liquid. There's Stacks. There's Space Chains. There's Blind Merge Mine Chains. There's, well, I guess Dogecoin is a sidechain to Litecoin, but that's a whole other ordeal. But how can we make sidechains fundamentally better? A few of you might remember last year there was a bug in how Blockstream implemented their peg-ins into their sidechain. What happened was when you peg in a coin to Blockstream, it starts a 4-week timer where that coin has to move, or else Blockstream's emergency recovery procedure becomes available. And I don't know exactly why this bug occurred, but what happened was some of the coins that were in Blockstream's main federation had expired, and they hadn't moved them in time. There was some issue. I don't know exactly why it manifested, but no coins were lost, so what, right? Well, we want things to be correct, and we want things to be closer to being trustless and having the exact properties that they have when we specify them. So with Sapio, and I'll give you a more concrete example, we're able to fix that type of bug. Sidechains and space chains, blind merge mine chains. You can have proof of stake protocols, and Sapio also has tooling for integrating the entire sidechain protocol, so you can have your replicated state machine living inside of the Sapio contract. That's the benefit of being a full-fledged programming language inside of Rust. You can do whatever you want. So I'm anticipating that Sapio is going to become sort of you can think of Sapio as being the hardware layer for a sidechain, and then the sidechain itself being the firmware that runs on top of it. So let's get into that example just to show you kind of diagrammatically how something like this would work. This is a lot to look at. Let's start by looking just at, I think I have a laser. Yeah, let's start just by looking at this backup part. This is what Blockstream had initially implemented. You put your coins into the sidechain, and then if 11 out of 15 people sign, well, then you can peg out and you can pay somebody outside of the federation. If, I guess this is kind of covering it, but if you have 2 out of 3 of your emergency backup providers and you wait 4 weeks, then they can pay to their emergency backup procedure. Now, with Sapio, you're able to add more layers to this protocol composably. So in this example, what I've added is one layer which says, okay, well, when we want this 2 of 3 to start this backup procedure, it goes through a transaction, and that transaction guarantees that it's only from the point where the 2 of 3 claim that a backup is required does that 4-week counter start. So we're able to guarantee that the appropriate amount of time is available for whatever recovery procedures to actually take place, and there's no rollover bug. There's another little bit, but I think I'll skip this and just prefer to take some questions towards the end. What can't Sapio do for you? Now, I'm kind of hyping this up. I'm saying, look, it can do everything, but look, are we Ethereum yet? Have we crossed this chasm and become capable of doing every DeFi protocol everybody's ever wanted? Not really. So if we take a sort of survey, and this is a rough chart, so don't look at it too closely. But this is a survey of things that are available for building smart contracts in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I put this on two axes of, let me go back. I put this on two axes of the multi-asset and the expressivity category. So we have, these are the things that are Bitcoin. This is Ethereum. So Ethereum is very much a multi-asset world, and it's very expressive. You have Miniscript, which you can do a subset of like well-formed scripts that are safe to use and have a lot of nice properties. Bitcoin script is a bit more flexible, but harder to use. You have BitML, which was some great research from I think Massimo. And you have Simplicity, which is also good. Discrete log contracts, you've probably heard of some of these things. The multi-asset stuff is interesting, but right now there's just not generally the support for it, and some of these things aren't yet mature or shippable. Discrete log contracts, I gave extra points on multi-asset because it's a protocol intended specifically to address that, but you can build things like discrete log contracts with Sapio as well. So Sapio could have some more points there, but I wanted to be fair to acknowledge the cool innovation going on that they're working on. The question becomes, what cluster does Sapio exist in as a solution? So we have one cluster here. We're going to call this the bespoke cluster. That means when you have a new idea, you have to implement everything from scratch. Because, hey, there's a lot of things that you need to do, and you need to write all of the integrations, all of the APIs and ABIs. It's a lot of work. And so I think things in this cluster end up being a little bit more bespoke. Anytime you're doing something, you've got to write everything as a total application. You can't use or reuse other components from other people. Then you have Viper and Solidity, where you can write interfaces, and you can say, hey, look, here's a piece of functionality that I made. Define this specification, and you're compatible with this contract. Make an ERC20, it can go into Uniswap. Sapio, I think, is edging towards the point where it's more in the composable cluster than it is in the bespoke cluster. And that is a major change for what you're able to build with Bitcoin. Now, somebody else can say, hey, look, I made a wallet vault contract, and you can come with your own implementation of who gets the recovery keys. And you can just plug in an object that implements your own recovery procedure, and will still make the correct thing. So you get this really nice composability, and I think that that's going to make a much better ecosystem of smart contracts and smart contract developers. Now, as I'm saying, this is kind of a new era. It's really exciting. How can you get involved? What can you do to get started? Now, the best thing to do is to read and start building. The tutorial, it's like a book. You can go, it's learn.sapiolang-lang.org. I'm really eager for feedback from any of you as you get into it. That has detailed code examples and things that you can build, try out, play with. So I think that you'll find that to be somewhat approachable. You might have to learn Rust in the process, but I think that's a doable task. They also have really great developer-friendly documentation. And if you're having any trouble, I'm a friendly guy. Shoot me a DM, and I'll get back to you, and we can maybe schedule a one-on-one, and I'll get you set up and rolling and building something. There are some underlying technologies that we're working on advancing to make Sapio even better. If you're a qualified reviewer or have an interest, definitely go and check these out. I'm going to post a link in my bio on Twitter a little bit later after this talk, so you can see that there, so you can get those. If that's not for you, that's also fine. I don't think people should have to worry about the underlying internals of how Bitcoin works to build smart contracts. You can use Sapio today. It just has a slightly different trust model. You have to have an online server that's ensuring the contracts execute correctly. But it still works the same. The types of applications you build will be identical. We are also having an event. You can go to pleb.fi/Miami if you want to join. We have really limited space. We have space for like 100 people, 100 plebs. Those 100 plebs could beat 300 Spartans any day, so it's going to be great. Get on the wait list. We have a wait list. It's going to be June 6th most of the day, starting at 12, so you can get over your hangovers, eat a taco, and then get rolling on learning how to build in Bitcoin. But we don't have space for everyone, but just put your info in. If you can't come this time, we're going to have future events, and so I'm sure I'll see you at the next one as well. I'm also working on, and this is sort of as an extension of these community building efforts, maybe a Bitcoin protocol incubator, where if you're trying to build something, build a startup on top of Bitcoin, getting you that ecosystem support so that you can get both educational resources, but also funding to be able to build your thing. I'll pause for a second. If you want to scan the QR code, you have the Power in your camera app on your phone. That'll get you a Google form. Put your name in if you're interested, and I'll reach out as it sort of takes shape. I'll just give a nice little pause so people can scan. The link is also 3YQZ8BD if you are a machine. So lastly, IRC. If you're a super nerd, you use IRC. That's the way to talk about open source projects. IRC, it just had some recent instability. That's drama I don't want to get into, but it would be on the Libra chat server. There's a CTV BIP review channel as well as a Sapio channel that you can get involved in. That is basically all that I have for you today. I'm super glad that all of you came here to learn about Bitcoin smart contracts, and we have about 5 minutes, a little bit less, for some questions if people want to hit up a mic and get to it. Thank you all.
Hi, sorry, I didn't catch. Are you going to be available around, like, for one-on-one type of questions today or tomorrow?
DM me on Twitter, and we can just do it post the conference, just because everything's running around.
Okay.
I've got like another panel in a little bit.
All right,
I'm doing.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, just message me. Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Don't be shy. You know, even if you have like a basic question, really simple. Like, everybody else is probably thinking that, so it's probably my fault that you don't get something, so ask away. You got something? Mike. Oh, well, let me go back to the, okay, it's Sapio is a smart contract language, kind of like the Solidity for Bitcoin, trying to get that developer experience of easy to build something, deploy, and integrate with other things in the ecosystem. Yeah. Okay. There's not anyone else. I can let everybody go get some lunch. Who's hungry? You got a question? Okay, just waving. All right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Go, buy some Bitcoin, stack some sats. Not financial advice.